Good afternoon. It is Sunday, September 8th, 2024, and it is the 23rd Sunday in Ordinary Time. And in the Gospel today, in the first reading, we're invited to reflect on the idea of being open. And in the case of the Gospel, we hear the story of Jesus healing the person who is deaf and mute. And so Jesus puts his fingers in the man's ears, he touches his tongue, and all of a sudden he can hear and he can speak. Ephatha, be open. But St. James takes us on just a slightly different tact, and I think that's the tact I want to follow with you today. It's one thing to, open our eyes and see, and open our mouth and speak, and open our ears and hear, but there's a deeper layer, and that deeper layer is being open in our mind and our heart. Do I really truly have an open mind? Do I have an open heart? Do I seek to find Jesus Christ in my neighbor? Do I seek to find Jesus Christ in my brothers and sisters? Is my mind such that I recognize that all of us, regardless of race, creed, color, whatever, are still God's children, and we are called to love one another as Christ has loved us? Is that my open-mindedness? Or do we have certain nurturing, structuring in our lives that closes us off to certain groups of people or certain things in our society? In the Gospel, we hear about be open. St. James, well, he's got the poor man and the rich man. And the poor man and the rich man, they're easy to pick on, right? You've got the rich man with all his wealth, right? And we have people who struggle with envy, right? Then you have the poor man where nobody wants to do anything for him. And we struggle with compassion and empathy. And somewhere in the middle of that is where you and I need to fall. The reality is the poor will be with us always. Jesus promised that, right? And it's pretty much true. The poor are always going to be with us. But so are the rich. And because the rich person recognize the privilege that they have to be able to give to support that poor person, to help them up there. Now, I'm not talking about enabling. I'm talking about helping them in a real positive way. The rich person has the privilege. They have the excess. They have the money. They have the wherewithal, right? If you sit down and you look at ourselves here in Canada, we got, a roof over our head. We got food in the fridge. We've got running water, we've got heat, we've got all of this stuff, but do we take it for granted? Do we forget that this is a blessing from God? In our case here in Alberta, you look at the city of Calgary where all of a sudden it's like they're on water restrictions, right? Now granted, it's about pipes, but the reality is like all of a sudden you've got a lot of people who can't just turn on their taps and let it run. They've got to stop and think about water, which is actually not a bad thing. It's actually a very challenging thing to realize that just how quickly things could stop. It's kind of like, look at what's going on in the Ukraine and Russia. What did Russia attack first? Infrastructure, and primarily electricity, right? Think of it. If all of a sudden you get home today and nothing turns on, there is no electricity in your house, right? Well, one, no heat, no air conditioning. The fridge, right? The food in the fridge, how quickly will it go bad? You got food in the deep freeze, how quickly will it go bad? We are so dependent upon these things that every now and then that struggle that people in Calgary are having with water should make us wake up to the reality of how blessed we are, how lucky we are. There's nobody in this country or in the United States running around trying to blow up Canada's infrastructure of electricity. But we are so dependent upon it, almost to the point where we take it for granted. We become complacent towards it. But it's an issue. And what are we doing about it? Are we aware how blessed we are? And now that I realize how blessed I am and how lucky I am, what am I doing? How am I reaching out to those who are not as blessed or not as graced as I might be? We go back to the poor man. A number of years ago, Bishop Henry said to me, Kevin, nobody in their right mind wants to live on the streets. And to a certain extent, he's right. I would say most of the people who are living on the streets don't want to be there. But on the other hand, over the years, I've met enough of them that don't want to be in a building either. And of course, we can look at it from the psychological point of view, we can look at it from the real life point of view, but I can't walk in that person's shoes. I've talked to many street people, and I live in the downtown of Lethbridge, and there's all kinds of street people that you run into. And some, it's a matter of drug addiction, some it's alcohol addiction, some it is just, I don't want that life. And that's fair. That's fair, right? The alcoholic, the drug addict, the person who just doesn't want to live in our structured world, there are choices that are being made. I may not agree with them, I may not support them, but I also have to learn how to live with people's choices. And so, who's helping them? And when we're helping them, are we really, really, truly helping them? Are we making a difference in their life? Or are we just enabling them to stay in the position that they are staying in? And that's where I sometimes get very concerned. You talk to the person who's a drug addict. How do we help them? How do we get them off the drugs and away from the drugs? Same thing with the alcoholic. The person who doesn't want to live in a building and just wants to live on the streets, well, that's a whole different story. But the drug addict. And the thing is, can I be open to them? Can I be open to their needs? Can I be compassionate and understanding of them? And can I also love them enough for tough love? Sometimes the hardest thing of all is to love somebody enough to watch them fail. You don't want to ever see anybody fail, but the reality is sometimes we need to fail before we figure out how to pick ourselves up. I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a social worker. I'm just a priest who gets asked for water, gets asked for a meal, gets told to take a hike. You engage these people, you encounter these people. They're God's children, and we have to love them. Don't have to like their life choices. Don't have to agree with their life choices. But somehow or another, we need to seek to help them because they too are God's children. Some people have greater abilities to help. Some people have less ability to help. But within us, there has to be a desire to help, a desire to make a difference. It is September 8th, 2024, and it's the 23rd Sunday in Ordinary Time. God has graced us, He has blessed us. What are we doing with the graces and the blessings that God has given us? Take care, watch over each other, and be good.